Okay, well, I guess we'll get going here and start by introducing today's guest. We're very excited to have Matt Brown with us today, and Matt's obviously somebody that's done a lot of things in the game, and maybe let him talk a little bit more about some of his history. But certainly a coach with the Canadian national team, assistant coach at the University of Denver, multi-man cup or Minto Cup winner, former all player, and we're very excited to have Matt with us to share some of his knowledge and talk us through a couple different scenarios, some drills, and all that. So thanks for joining us, Brownie.
Yeah, Brucey, thanks for having me. Russ and Dave, thanks for having me be a part of this series that you're putting together. It's going to be an amazing resource and tool for Canadian coaches, across the country and players as well. So happy to be a part of it, and looking forward to diving into some lacrosse here. But as Brucey mentioned, I'm the associate head coach at the University of Denver. I came down to Denver, almost 20 years ago. From 2001 to 2005, I was a player there on the team. And then, after graduating in the spring of 2005, I took a year off to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and figured out that I wanted to coach, and I wanted to coach back at my alma mater at the University of Denver. So in the summer of 2006, I was offered a volunteer position, and I've been here ever since. So I grew up in Western Canada, grew up in Burnaby, British Columbia, and like everybody when you're young, played every sport you could imagine. But in true Canadian fashion, was really had a love and a passion for hockey and lacrosse, and was fortunate enough to play both of those growing up. Through the Burnaby Minor Lacrosse Association, had some great coaches along the way. The late great Jack Crosby, playing for him for multiple years was an unbelievable experience, and I've taken a lot from what I've learned from those coaches in my minor days, and applied them to the way that we coach here at the University of Denver, as well. And then as Brucey mentioned, was fortunate to be part of the Burnaby Junior A Lakers, and we had a pretty amazing run there for a while, from 99 to 2004, playing in the Minto Cup every year and hoisting that trophy above your head. That's there's nothing greater for a lacrosse player who's 21 and under growing up in Canada of raising that Minto Cup trophy. So, some great memories with those guys, and I had some great coaches, Paul Del Monte and Dave Locke, who kind of started off the Burnaby program, and brought in some great Eastern players and guys from Alberta. And then my last year in 2004, I was lucky enough to have Kurt Malowski, who's now obviously coaching the men's Canadian team, and also with the Calgary Roughnecks. So I had some great guys to learn from. From after playing Junior A and then going to the University of Denver, got drafted into the NLL. That's where I met Brucey Codd, and played down in Arizona for a couple of years. Had a year in Colorado and a year in Portland. Didn't play as long as I would have wanted. I like to think it was because I started to get into coaching full time. But if you probably ask Bob McMahon, Orangeville legend, he'd probably tell you just because I was a Western Canadian guy and I wasn't that good. But we had a great group, and I love that group in Arizona. We had great coaches. Hammer and Slip were fantastic. Amazing leadership with Dan Dawson, and Peter Locke was our captain, and Bruce Codd was another captain of ours, and we just had great teammates. And that was a special group, going to a couple championships and never being able to pull it off. But, just wish that could have lasted a little bit longer. But some great relationships and some great friendships, made along the way. During the summer months after college, I also played in the MLL. So I played for the Denver Outlaws. I was living back in Denver, with my wife, Jewel. And so that made the most sense. Although I did miss the box game, it was nice to go play down at Mile High Field on Saturday nights on, a beautiful night in Denver. And probably that's where I learned the most about the field game. I was playing with these amazing, talented All-Americans from all across the country. Guys like Brendan Mundorf, who was a fantastic box player as well. Drew Westervelt, Ryan Powell, Josh Sims, who played in the NLL and the MLL, too. And I was really kind of loved to being a sponge and listening to what they had to say, all the little details of the field game, and probably where I learned the game, the most. And then lastly, being a part of Team Canada. I tried out as a player in 2006, right after college. And I remember vividly, I still have nightmares about it, going to training camp, and Colin Doyle setting me up on a number of occasions right in the doorstep and throwing the ball right in the goalie's stick. And was probably the first cut off the board at that camp, and knew it based upon my performance. So unfortunately didn't make that team. But then 4 years later came back in 2010 and tried out again, and felt like I was playing some pretty darn good lacrosse, and felt like I should have made the team. And so there was this bittersweet moment where, I got this call, and it was from Dave Huntley, and he was calling me to tell me I was last cut off the team. And so here I am, I'm all pissed off at him and thinking I deserve to be on the squad. And, Hunt's, why are you doing this to me? But then, in the same conversation, it goes down the road of, but I want you to be part of the coaching staff for Team Canada moving forward. So, since that day in 2010, I've been with the National Men's Field Program, both for the U19, the junior side, and also the men's side, for the last, handful of World Championships. So I hated getting that call from Dave Huntley, but forever grateful, for it, because we all know that there's no greater honor than representing Canada, no matter what the role is. So a little bit of background about me. My exposure to the box game, to the field game, is very similar to many of the guys that were around my age growing up in Canada. We played, for the most part, rec lacrosse. On Sundays, there was no practice. And, for those of you that know Western Canada, know the Pacific Northwest, when you're playing on a Sunday in the wintertime, it's wet. And so there was a lot of mud bowls being played out there. And it wasn't really much field lacrosse. It was pretty much box on a field. You had one or two subs, and that was about it. You treated it like a soccer match. It was completely different than what it is today. It was the two most important positions in the whole team were your center midi. He was like a centerman in hockey. He took the draws. He played offense. He played defense. And your goaltender. And most of the time, your best player kind of played both, for a half, and that's really what it was. So when I came down to the University of Denver, I really had no idea what field lacrosse was. That has changed a lot since then. Maybe too much, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But there's a lot more field lacrosse being played now in Canada. So having gone through this process myself, and having coached a whole bunch of Canadians at Denver, where the Canadian player is a big part of our identity and who we are as a program. What I thought I would talk about now is knowing what I know now. What are really the keys for Canadian kids who are learning the field game? What are those keys, and what should they be focusing on? So one of the first things that pops to mind when we talk about the keys to the field game is stick protection, right? As box players, we grow up being taught to keep two hands on our stick, cradle with both hands. And it's different in the field game, and one of the biggest reasons is because of the long pole. And so learning how to top hand cradle, one hand cradle, where you have your top hand in your armpit, you kind of hold your bottom hand out in front of you, like a shield, making sure that your stick is vertical, so it's in line with your body. It's not parallel to the ground, and you're not holding it like a briefcase. And it's amazing to me when I see young Canadian kids, and we'll come up to Toronto, or we'll go to Vancouver, and we'll put on a field clinic, and guys are running around, in the open field, trying to hold their stick like a briefcase. And then the next thing you know, the ball's falling out. So the one-handed cradle is really important. It's really important for the stick protection. Why do you need it? That question comes up a lot. Well, there's more space to cover, and when you have one hand on your stick, you're that much faster, and it's that much safer as far as, protecting the ball, versus, long poles. Along the lines of long poles, the other key that I think is really important for, Canadian kids, learning at the youngest age you can, if possible, is to dodge, is to carry the ball, versus long poles. And that is, I'll never forget my first month at the University of Denver. We were playing, fall lacrosse, and here I am with very little to no field lacrosse experience. And, I'm being thrown on this field with, great players from all across the United States. And I literally could not carry the ball for more than 2 steps against the long pole. One, because I was holding it like a briefcase, and 2, I didn't have that experience of truly going up against poles. So one of the things that I do, coaching young field guys at the very early age, is have them go against all poles. Because what we have a tendency of doing in the field game is, if you have 4 poles in the field and 2 short sticks, defending, typically we move the ball around until we find that matchup versus the short stick. Great strategy, right? But from a development standpoint, that's not going to help us become better, in our growth of being a field player. So one of the things I do is have all 6 guys, put poles in their hands. Don't allow the guys to, work their way out of a position by only dodging short sticks. Put more pressure on the offensive player by going up and challenging them to go up against the poles. The other thing that I would say as far as dodging goes is, Canadian guys are really good at east-west dodging. East-west dodging in the sense of, getting the ball to the half boards, going inside out for your pick to kind of find the back, swinging the ball from one boards to the other, and we're not as great, or we don't get as much reps at, as far as really dodging, north-south, running to the goal, and putting your foot in the ground. And so, I think from a dodging standpoint, going against poles and dodging a little bit north-south more is really important at kind of the younger ages for guys to focus on. Along the same lines of with dodging, the next key that I think is really important is your footwork. Teach more than just the jab step. I remember, going to box practices, and how many hours did we spend on the boards throwing the ball off the wall and learning how to catch the ball, or shots on a goalie before and after practice. When you're young, almost every drill revolves around shooting. All great stuff. But footwork is really, really important. It's not just important from a dodging standpoint. It's also important from a shooting standpoint. I believe in the windup as being one of the most important skills that a field or box player can develop. But how you do that with your feet is just as important as how you do that with your stick. And so, talking more about footwork and teaching guys how to change direction quickly. The term that we use on a daily basis with our guys here at the University of Denver is, what foot's your gas and what foot's your brake. When you watch guys and you put them on the line and you just have them do, an Orangeville suicide, and you have them, touch the other end of the floor and you have them change direction, you can pick out which guy's not changing direction correctly, which guy rounds his turns, which guy loads the right foot and which guy doesn't, teach that. I think, we teach maybe the jab step and maybe a little bit of the face dodge, but then it tends to stop from there. And I was just telling Brucey and Russ and Dave about a great resource that's out there that the college coaches, the IMLCA, Intercollegiate Men's Lacrosse Coaching Association, did over this COVID break last spring. Danny Chamati from Richmond kind of led the charge. There's this thing called on YouTube, Coaching Through the Cancellation. And this past spring, I did a video on offensive development, and part of it, of this video, was the first part of it is footwork. And there's 6 great footwork drills in here that you can easily incorporate into a practice plan that doesn't take much time at all. We know how valuable stick work is, and shooting, and the 2-man game, and learning how to cut the middle, and how to pick, and all of that stuff. Everything's important, right? But if we take a little bit more time out of our practice plan and work on our footwork, I'm going to tell you, it's going to pay big time dividends over the course of the long run. And there's a ton of videos in here from all different coaches across the country on various skills and drills that can be applicable. And so it's a great free resource for any coach out there. So again, it's just on a YouTube. You can just Google coaching through the cancellation. The next piece of key that I think is important, and this is an easy one, right? You hear this a lot, is offhand or weekend. And when I talk about offhand or weekend, I'm not a huge believer in that you have to be equal 50-50. That you don't have to be equal to be elite, but it is going to help you be a better player, especially a better field player, if you have some sort of skill in your offhand or your weekend. I'm less worried about a guy becoming, a fantastic offhand shooter or a great offhand catcher on the inside, because typically you're going to be able to find ways to get your strong hand to shoot. Typically, I want you to catch the ball on the inside, so you want to make sure you have that in your strong hand. But more focused on, being able to carry the ball, in your offhand or your weekend. And from a passing standpoint, being able to pass the ball with your offhand or weekend, getting yourself out of kind of high pressure situations. I feel like that's where I see a lot of Canadians, they struggle. There's a double team, near goal line extended or close to the goal, and they just can't get it out. Their exit is to their weekend, but they just can't use it, and so they're not comfortable enough, doing that. So work on your offhand, and one of the things that best ways to do that is in the box is do it. If you're a lefty and you're doing all the lefty drills, just do the same drills and go over and do them right-handed. I'm a big believer in that. We try to teach that in the box that we're doing down here in Denver to our young guys. And, imagine if you could have some of the same skills that you had, with your weekend as you do with your strong hand. And then the last thing, or the two last things that I have here from a system standpoint, I think from the box game, we're such big believers, and I am too, of playing in pairs. Playing in threes is really important. When you move over and you translate into the field, there's obviously more space. There's one more guy. And so instead of having 5 on the offensive end, there's 6. And though a lot of teams now have incorporated a lot of pairs types offenses, you've got to be able to play in threes as well. And even from the box side of things, and I did a presentation on this a while ago where, I think 3 is greater than 2, in the sense that if you can get 3 guys involved in a 2-man game, you're going to be better off. You've got more options. You got more entry points to get the ball on the inside. And so I think just from a system standpoint, triangle motions, whether it's from up top you know, with middies dodging downhill, you've got a dodger, you've got a follow, you've got a drift, or whether it's attackman down below, one guy clearing through to the crease, another guy rotating over to be an outlet at X, another guy sneaking down the backside pinch, all on a string. Playing in threes from a system standpoint is really important to work on and develop as well. And then the last thing that I have that's a key is, you know, is play more box lacrosse. You know, here we are, we're talking about field, and, you know, the best thing about field, the best players in field are the guys that have played more box. Canadians are the best players in the world because of box. It's the single best tool to get your game better. It's the best way to introduce the game. And one of the things that crushes me, you know, as a Canadian guy who's coaching field lacrosse in the States, is when I hear of guys. I'm not playing box this summer because I'm just focusing on my field team. I'm telling you right now that is not in your best interest. The reason why we've become the best in the world and we have the best players in the world is not because we focus all of our attention on field. It's because we play a lot of box. And so I would just encourage everybody to continue to push that. You know, these keys from a field lacrosse sense are going to make our guys better players, but we got to continue to be inside and play more box. You know, as Brucey mentioned earlier, you know, I've got a couple clips that I'd like to go through with some drills that I think are good to use, and we can talk about them. You know, how we can implement them into practice, and some of the things that we're focusing on, and some of the things I just talked about. You know, applicable to practice plans. The other thing is, if you have questions, you know, I think, you know, when we do these talks, it's pretty easy for me to jump on and talk about what I want to talk about for an hour, but it's more important for you guys to kind of to get the questions that you want answered. So, you know, Russ, what do you think? You think I should jump into some of these drills, or should we answer some questions first?
No, I think it's a good idea to jump into the drills, Coach. And one thing we forgot to mention at the top is if people do have questions, go post them into the Q&A, not into the chat window. It's easier in the Q&A, and then it'll prompt us to make sure that we answer. But I think you can keep rolling, and then people post their questions. We'll get to them at the end.
Sounds great. You know, so this first drill that we have, we do this a lot, and this is, put this one in here because it kind of accomplishes a few of the keys that I just mentioned and talked about. You know, being able to one-hand carry, you know, and stick protection. Also being able to use your offhand to get yourself out of kind of high pressure situations. So we call this drill double, and we do it from X, and we also do it from up top. And all it is a guy that starts behind, and we have a straight line that's above the goal. Okay. And the way that we work it is that we go in threes. The first guy in line is a D guy. The second guy in line is an O guy. And the third guy in line is another D guy. So we go D-O-D. And we're looking to double team and put pressure, you know, on the ball. So the first D guy is going to approach the ball, and our ball carrier is going to work on having his stick vertical, straight up and down. He's going to tuck that top hand into his armpit, and he's going to do what we call looking through the window, seeing through the windows. You know, each defender has two windows, you know, one in the front side and one on the back side, and we need to look through the windows so that we can see the double team in the slider. So we're encouraging the offensive player to bait the second defender to come in and double team. And then we're working on rolling away with our stick to the outside and throwing it back at X. Guy at X would catch it, and we'd start it all over again. So the next three guys would be D, O, you would roll off the opposite way, and then D again to be the double team guy. So he'll run up, roll away, draw the double, keep his feet moving, and then we do it again, get all the way up here. And this thing goes pretty quickly. You know, what happens in this drill, one, you get this, guy forgetting to go double team the ball. You know, two, you get guys that kind of want to exit early And the point of this drill is to try to put yourself in the most dangerous position of losing the ball as you possibly can. Like, this is a poor example of it right here. This kind of defeats the purpose. This guy is going away from the goal, and so he's not going to draw that double team. We want to get into here to draw that double team, put pressure on ourselves so that we can roll away and execute a clean pass with our stick to the outside. So pretty easy drill, pretty simple drill. It's a great, drill to kind of start practice. It goes quickly. If you look at the line, we probably have, I'm guessing 15, 16 guys here. I would say 12 guys would be great. 10 would be tough. You'd have to take some breaks pretty quickly if you want to keep the pace up. But it also, if you have more kids, if you're at a tryout or you got two teams, that have to practice together because of lack of field space or what have you, this is a good drill to get a bunch of reps in. And then when you can do the same thing when you go from the top. So now we're just dodging from the top, and it's the same setup. D, O, D. And this D guy is going to be the slider. And so now we're working on dodging hard downhill, drawing the slider, and either throwing it across our body back to this follow guy or rolling to the outside and throwing it back to the follow guy. So we dodge down, we draw the slide, and then we roll away. Again, working on stick to the outside. So if you alternate sides, you're going to get equal amount of reps between going to your strong hand and your weak hand. Here's a pull pass across your body, but this guy telegraphs his pass going back. And this is a skill that we talk a lot about. If you get your hands up to shop or you look to pass the ball, human nature as a D guy is to try to get that stick up in the passing lane. So can you throw that ball back out of your dodge? And that's a tougher skill to master, but I think talking about it at a younger age, right away is important. So you go down, double team, throw it back, push the other way, double team, throw it back. And again, it's a good footwork drill and stick work drill to start off practice. Next drill that I put in here that I think is a good drill is this 3v2 scrap it. And this is probably something that a lot of you guys already do. This is more of a box type drill on the field. We started off with a ground ball at either the high end of the lines or the low end of the lines. And you put it in a position where this offensive guy is going to pick it up. And you would start with no pressure on him. You just want him to get low and scoop through that ground ball and kind of roll away and get it to his adjacent help, who's this guy in the middle right here. And then as the drill goes on, you start to put pressure on his backhand to really work on scooping through and getting through that ball. So we roll a ball out here, whistle blows, he gets through it, he rolls away, he throws it, and now this guy's job was to pick up that ground ball, roll away, and get it to his adjacent help. And now we play a 3-on-2, and we've got half the field, to play with. And if we were going on both sides, I would put cones down the middle to separate one side to the other. And here's the skill of the wind-up. So we throw it over, and now this guy starts to wind up to suck the next guy in. And it's a great, quick decision-making drill. And we wind up to make one guy play us, and we read the second man. This is the second man in the rotation. If he's high, the ball goes low. If he rotates down, then the ball would go back up to where we just received it from. And you can get a ton of reps in a short amount of time. This was this past fall, we were only allowed to practice in groups of 10 or less, due to COVID. And so we would do a lot of these kind of small-sided drills, but we felt like, we got better at it. Here's a good example of working on how to box a guy out. At the same practice, right before this drill, we worked on box out ground balls. Here's another guy on the wind-up skill. Winds up, and he reads the second defender. put the ball in the middle. He's got to get the ball out as two guys kind of converge on him. Make sure they don't go into the whistle. Now we've got to read the situation. And it's a quick little play to the end. Okay? And then you can expand off of this. So it doesn't always have to be a 3-on-2. You can we like to put an area that we call the honey hole in the middle of the field. We'll put an O guy in here, and we'll put a D guy in here. And now we'll do the same exact drill, but the D guy is allowed to rotate out. The D guy can be involved in the rotation, but the O guy has to stay inside the cones. He has to stay inside that honey hole area, okay? And it makes for, a little bit more tighter space. It makes for great off-ball inside, movement, as far as can you separate, but you can't, realistically go too far out. Can you go to the edge of the honey hole and then curl back, for the ball? So that's a good way to expand this drill and take the next step. The other thing that you can do is you can have on the other side of the field, you could have same thing, 3 lines of O. You can have 2 lines of D. And now if you roll the ball out, let's say you rolled the ball out to here, you could have this 3-on-2, and you can add these 2 top guys to make it a 4-on-3. Or you could add these 4 guys to make it a 5-on-4. And now you can kind of just ping pong these reps back and forth. So 3v2 scrapping is a great drill. It's a nice little follow-up drill after stick work or some sort of double drill. Guys kind of getting their feet underneath them. One of the things that we do, and this is, I took this from Bob McMahon in our days in Arizona, and this is a good way to incorporate some box into the field, is from a stick work standpoint, is we do blue line passing. So 2v1 blue lines. And Brucey remembers this. We would do this every practice, every Friday night before, an Arizona Sting game. 3 guys break out. So you've got the first guy taking the far lane. He passes the ball across. He takes the far lane. The second guy takes the middle lane. He's going to get the ball back. Ball's going to go back to him. And then the third guy takes the near side lane. And we put the cones out here in the middle of the field to really determine the lanes and make sure that you're getting outside of them. And it's a great drill to work on getting your feet moving, getting your hands up as you making a pass. That first pass out of your own zone, in box lacrosse and in field lacrosse is the most important one. And so this guy that catches the ball, from a goalie or from a close D guy, this first pass that he makes out of his own zone is really important. So, just some of the small little teaching points that we would touch on here is, where's our top hand? We want to make sure our top hand is up at shoulder height. We want to make sure our butt end is pointing forward. We want to make sure our feet are moving downfield. And we want to try to execute on this first pass coming out of our zone. And then at the other end, you've got a D guy that's waiting for you, and it's a quick 2-on-1. And that D guy can jump the ball, and we got to make a quick read, okay? Or you can kind of slow play it. And then it's coming right back at you again. Stick above your shoulder, quick read. And you can get a lot of quick reps in this drill. What we've done for this drill, instead of on a field keeping the goals in the creases and making it such a long run, we bring them up pretty much the length of a box rink and kind of use cones to create a crease, around them. So a couple yards, about 5 to 10 yards inside the restraining line is a good landmark to put those. Blue lines drill, you can start off with just, 1 guy going. You can start off with 2 guys going, and then eventually it can evolve into 3 guys going and ending up with this 2-on-1. So that's a good drill. We do that quite often. The other thing I would say from a dodging standpoint, I talked a little bit about dodging and having guys learn how to dodge more north-south than necessarily east-west. Everybody does one-on-ones, but how you do the one-on-ones is really important. This is set up, we call these dive-down one-on-ones. And we have all our D guys are up here. They're all in a straight line up at right where the coach is with the balls. And we have a cone here that's designated for the D guys. So no matter where the ball goes, the D guys have to crash in from up above at the top of the box, and they've got to get around the cone, and they got to go approach the ball wherever the ball may go. From an offensive standpoint, if you're down below, we put a little bit of a zigzag pattern in. So this guy's going to start here, and he's got to go around this cone, and he's got to get back out so that he's catching this ball on a move. You know, it's a little bit more game-like scenario. You think of maybe there was a dodge on this side of the field, and the ball got thrown back in like that double-double drill, and it got thrown over one more, and now you got a D guy that is rotating out of the middle to approach you. This is a little bit more game-like. And so we'll start the drill with the coach. He'll blow the whistle. These guys will go. And now we're working on, I talked about wind-ups before. It's a great way to work on your footwork of winding up and setting your feet. Then we would go the other side. Lefty would go around. This guy closes the gap a little bit tighter so he doesn't have as much space to wind up. So he tucks it under, goes underneath. And then we would work up top. So up top, the D guy would do the same thing. The D guy would get down and around the cone, and now he would approach the ball up top. And the O guy, there's cones out here, he would loop up and around. And what we want the O guy to work on is catching this ball moving forward. A lot of times when you do one-on-ones and you do them from a standstill, you know, it's hard because you can't catch the ball going forward. And so the easier way to dodge is if your momentum's going this way and the D guy's momentum's going that way. This is what I'm talking about from a north-south standpoint. Okay, go a little bit more north-south, run, dodge towards the goal. So he'll get around that cone. We'll throw the ball in. This guy will catch it going forward. He didn't on that one. Let's see if this guy does a better job. A little bit better job. This is a righty Canadian. He puts it in his left hand. Not a great lefty shot, but I'm going to tell you that's much better than what it was when he first got to DU. Ball's back down low now. Same thing down low. Bad pass. Let's go to the other side. Again, good read goes under. Guy's up top again, top right. Okay, so here's a good example of like a downhill dodge. So this guy catches the ball going forward, and watch how he puts his foot into the ground. This is what I mean by going north-south and what we can work on. You know, we're really good box players getting the ball in the half boards and sweeping it over the top or going under east-west. But can we be good at coming downhill and turning the corner going under or turning the corner going over? This little footwork as far as planting and putting your foot into the ground and focusing on which foot's your gas, which foot's your brake, right there, that's really important. And you can see that by this guy going forward towards the goal and the D guy having to come out from the goal and planting and stopping as this guy's coming at him, this is a hard dodge to stop. You're going to be able to run right by him. So dive down one-on-ones it's a great drill to do. You can get a lot of reps in a short amount of time. Another version of this, which I'll show you real quick, is we call these one-on-ones, we call these one-on-ones hot sauce one-on-ones, where you put cones out. It's a bunch of all the red dots are the cones, and then you have players. Here's a D guy right here. The X's are the O guys. D guy right here. X's are the O guys. D guy right here. X is the O guy. D guy right here. X is the O guy. You've got coaches up top with the ball, and you start with a one-on-one. So it's kind of like an Oklahoma drill in football that on the whistle, this O guy has to get up and around this cone so he's coming back, catching it going forward. This D guy has to go down and around this cone so he's approaching from the inside out. And the coach is going to throw this ball in, and now he's got to make his move going downhill, but there's other guys in space. So you just can't run and sweep it across the field and make it unrealistic. You have a smaller area for you to work with. And so you've got to be able to put your foot in the ground and quickly go. And then right when that one's done, whistle blows and this guy goes. D guy goes around. And then right when that one's done, Whistle goes, this guy goes. Coach throws the ball in. And so you can get a lot of reps of quick one-on-ones where you're working on attacking the ball going forward. And it's a great drill for the defense as well, approaching the ball from the inside out. And then you can build off of it as well. You can add in, you can make it more 2-on-2s. And the way that we would do this is we would do it diagonally. So you'd set your cones up like this. Again, you'd have a D guy on the inside, offensive guy is the X. D guy on the inside, offensive guy is the X. Coach is up there. Whistle goes. Both sets of guys go around the cones. Both sets of guys go around the cones. Everybody's got to keep their eye on the ball. And the coach either throws it in up top or he throws it in down low. And now we're attacking and we're playing 2-on-2. And so we call these hot sauce one-on-one. So a little bit different than dive downs. It's a little bit faster of a tempo. But again, it really works on the skill of catching the ball, going forward in attacking the goal. Transition. Let's talk a little bit about transition. So along the same lines of dodging, one of the things that can help with teaching young players, how to dodge is encouraging them or dodge more downhill and try to get the goal, get to the goal, is encouraging them to dodge in transition. So we have three lines or 2 lines up top. We've got 2 lines up top, O-line, D-line, D-line. And then we have a line of attack, O-line here. Okay, and then we've got a D guy that's not in the screen right now, but you'll see him in a second. He's going in. Okay, and we have the ball coming from up top. And we're focusing on dodging now in space. And we're trying to, as best as we possibly can, use only half of the field. And so can we dodge towards the goal? Can we put our foot in the ground? Can we work on the skill of the double-double drill that when we do draw a slide right here, can we roll to the outside, keep our stick to the outside, and execute a clean pass to a guy that's following behind us? And can we play? Can we continue to play? And what you end up getting is you get a little bit of combination of the one-on-ones that we just saw, whether it was a dive down or the hot sauce, along with the 3v2 scrapping. Because if you can teach guys how to dodge downhill and get to the goal, they're going to draw that slide and you're going to have that short window of opportunity where you have an odd man situation. So the ball gets rolled into the other side, and we would do the same thing. Hard dodge downhill, and this guy takes a shot. Ball goes to the other side, same thing. Hard dodge downhill. Guy makes the read, and he goes under, okay? So playing 3-on-3, but not just playing 3-on-3 inside the box, but starting it up from the midfield line, encouraging these guys to dodge downhill, okay, will help them with their dodging. And then the last thing I want to show you is just a little bit of a build-up. So I talked about playing in threes, okay? And so this is a build-up here where we have a 2-on-2 going on, and we'll let this 2-on-2 go and happen first, and then we'll stop it, and we'll have a 2-on-2 go on the other side of the field, same exact thing. So this is what I mean by a little bit more east-west, where we're attacking the half boards. This guy's coming from the inside out. And then the buildup is we'll have these 4 guys, all 4 guys play. And we'll get a 3rd guy involved, 1 guy from the backside involved with the 2-man game that is happening on the ball side. And so getting a 3rd guy involved in the ball and working more in threes as opposed to twos, I believe is a really important feature. And it's a really important concept within the field game. If we just focus on the 2 guys, then it tends to get old, But if you bring a guy over from the backside, then you can use him as a rebounder. And if it's not there, then you can use him also as a ball swing to swing it over to the other side of the field. So working in threes off of a 2-on-2 buildup is a great way, is a great drill to kind of introduce working in threes. You can also do it where you have 2-on-2 from one's wing, and then you have the 2-on-2 from behind. And it would be the same setup. Let the 2-on-2 happen from the wing first. Let the 2-on-2 happen from behind next. And then let the 4-on-4 occur where you're bringing one guy from the opposite pair that's not working with the ball over to be the 3. Okay. Let's see here. Looks like we got a couple questions here. Friggy, you recruit an attackman. What are you looking for? Midfielders, what are you looking for? Great question, Friggy. You know, I think from a recruitment standpoint, you know, some of the keys when I'm looking at it from an attackman, you know, you're looking for more pure natural goal scorers. For myself, it's guys that are real crafty around the goal. You know, you look at our attack that we currently have right now is, you know, our left side is Ethan Walker, a kid from Peterborough. Our right side is Alex Simmons, a kid from St. Catharines. You know, 2, you know, great players that have a ton of box experience, you know, playmakers. When I look at midfielders, you know, we're tending looking at more guys that are a little bit more versatile in the open field, guys that have a little bit more range in their shot. You know, this arc that we have on our field right here, this is a 10-yard mark. You know, we would need our midfielders to be able to let one fly from 12 yards away, you know, and so that's an important component of it. But, you know, I think, you know, your playmaking guys, your goal scorers want to be down at the attack end. And I think you want to have more of an athlete from up top.
Can I jump in on that, maybe Brownie, a little bit? Like Riley O'Connor talked about last week about, you know, Canadians, you know, so one of the things you mentioned a lot about is, you know, dodging. Certainly the north-south has been a common theme, but he also talked about, you know, Canadian players not being able to shoot from the outside a little bit, right? You know, so is that something that, you know, what are some ideas behind that, you know, we as Canadians can start to work on that? So you mentioned Ethan Walker, Alex Simmons, 2 players I'm, you know, very familiar with coaching in the Junior A League, incredible feet and things like that. But like you said, probably aren't maybe, you know, long range shooters. So maybe just some discussion on that or some advice on that.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, Brucey. You know, I couldn't shoot from the outside. I can tell you that much. I couldn't be a midfielder, and you know, but you're exactly right. You know, if you don't have that range, then you kind of pigeonhole yourself. You know, I think one of the great things about both those guys that you just mentioned with Ethan and Alex is that they can do that. You know, they can stretch a defense, and when you work on that wind up and you stretch a defense, then you're going to open up the underneath, or you're going to open up a little bit of a hitch to kind of get to the top side. You know, how do you establish that? Is, you know, one of the things, and this kind of sounds a little bit silly, but we would do this with our young guys, is, you know, bring a shot clock out. You know, like, we make it competitive. You know, no one likes being the guy that shoots the ball 45 miles an hour. You know, no one wants to be that guy. You know, and so, you know, make it a little bit more competitive. You know, bring the shot clock out. Just like anything, it's something for these guys to shoot for. It's a goal for them to shoot the ball a little bit harder, shoot the ball a little bit faster. You know, I think from a coaching standpoint, you know, obviously when you're dealing with really young kids, you know, you want to kind of give them some guidance early on of where we should be shooting the ball from. Where's kind of our A quality shots, and year by year that range should move out some. That should move out. That should move out. That should move out. Because if we don't do that, then, and we just purely look for, you know, tap-ins around the crease or inside finishes, then we're going to limit our players in the long run. You know, another kid, Westberg, that we had, you know, he was, you know, was a heck of a long range shooter, you know, and, you know, that wasn't something that he had off the get-go. You know, he was more of kind of you know, dodge you under, or he kind of dangle you and get to the middle type of guy. That was something he really worked on. The other thing that I think Canadians are great at, that I think we need to continue to highlight and continue to work on, is screen shooting. You know, you don't have to shoot the ball a million miles an hour if you can shoot the ball properly or correctly around the screen from 12 to 13 yards. You know, if that goalie can't see the release of that ball, that's going to be really hard for him to pick it up. You know, we have you know, a junior on our team, Josh Dalwick, who he's one of the best screen shooters that I've ever seen. And he just does a great job. Doesn't shoot it really hard, but he does a great job of pulling it right off a guy's hip, you know, around a screen. And it's really hard for goalies to pick up.
I watched a clip the other day from, I think it was the 98 World Championship. Mark Millen scored the winning goal around Steve Fennell, and it was like just a prime example of that, you know, shooting around a screen. And, you know, obviously he was a guy that could do it a lot of different ways. But, you know, just, you know, some other things, you know, talking about, we got some questions here. And one of them is, you know, what is the advice you'd give a grade 10 athlete that is very interested in potentially playing college lacrosse?
Well, the first thing I would do, and this is, you know, everybody kind of looks for, you know, ask these questions. And it's a great question. The first thing I would say is, don't get caught up in having to, you know, play in all these, you know, high-end club teams, or go to all these, you know, high-end tournaments, be on all these lists. You know, don't get caught up in all of that. The most important thing is what are you doing away from practice? You know, what are you doing on your own time? You know, are you a guy that is, you know, playing on a club team or playing on your rec team, and then when you go home, you're throwing your stick in the closet? Or are you a guy that sleeps with your stick at night and is in the backyard throwing it off the wall? So that's the first thing, you know. So I think there's a lot of misconception out there that you have to be on all these teams. That's not the case by any means. You know, the next thing is that if you want to pursue a college lacrosse career, you know, is you got to do well academically. You know, it's completely out of the equation if you just don't do your part in the classroom. And I'm sure mom and dad have told everyone this a gazillion times, but the reason why they're telling you it is because it's the truth. And so you got to focus on your schoolwork. You got to use school as a way to continue to develop really good habits. And if you do that will help you kind of throughout the rest of your career. And then the last thing is you don't have to be on all these fancy club teams or go to all these showcases, but you got to be proactive too. And so, you know, putting together a nice email that includes your grades, you know, that talks a little bit about yourself, you know, is important. And you got to be persistent with that. You know, there's thousands and tens of thousands of kids out there that, you know, are vying for, you know, really what is a limited opportunity to play college lacrosse. You know, I used to tell guys all the time, there's a home for everyone. There really isn't anymore. There's just not as many spots. And so you've got to be proactive from that standpoint, you know, as well. Don't be generic, you know, and be, you know, individualize those letters that you send to coaches. Do some research. It's like anything, the more effort you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. But really, those are the most important things. You know, what are you doing away from practice time on your own? You know, and then how are you going to do in the classroom? Are you working on great habits in the classroom? And then, you know, can you be professional and persistent as far as, you know, getting some exposure and putting yourself out there by emailing, you know, college coaches. And if you get the opportunity to go to a showcase event, be prepared. You know, if you go there and you're not prepared for it, then that's worse than not going at all, because you've just gone there and you know, you've kind of shown them that you're not ready. You don't take this thing seriously. So if you do get the opportunity to go to some of these events or a tournament, be prepared for it, and the rest will take care of itself.
Coach, can I just add on to the back of that too, a question, kind of a secondary question on the age groupings. In Canada, we go to school. The age groupings they use in the US are quite a bit different than Canada as far as they use a September deadline. When I was growing up, I don't know if it was because my parents wanted to kick my ass out of the house earlier or not, but I was in a rush to go to college at 17, 18. I'm feeling more and more, and I've been involved in lacrosse for quite some time now, that focus has changed to trying to get these kids to that 19 to 20 year of age, get a little bit stronger, a little faster. I know there's eligibility issues, but, you know, what's your take or your you know, focus as far as age grouping? Is it something that we should be rushing kids to try to get there a little younger, or take our time and try to get them there a bit older?
I think, Russ, it's case by case. I think there's some kids that are ready for it, now, coming out of high school at the proper age. I think there's a lot of kids that aren't. This thing of, going to college and, being a collegiate athlete at any level, and going to school as well. It's a full-time job. It's totally changed since the days I was in school. The requirements and the commitment levels are night and day, and what you're doing, away from the classroom and the practice field, there's a lot more responsibility on you. So I think it's case by case. From a lacrosse standpoint, I was a much better lacrosse player when I was 21, 22 than when I was 18. And so that there's something to be said for that as well. But I think there's a lot of kids that maybe just not ready for it, and that's okay. You don't have to be, but there's others that are, and if they are, then they're typically the kids that are thriving in the classroom and on the field already. So why not kind of keep that thing going? And I think it also depends upon what's your reasoning. If it's I'm going to roll back because I want to go to a better school, or go to another event and get more looks. Well, that might not be the best reason, because there's another crop of guys right behind you that are probably pretty darn good, make probably better than you too. So I think it depends upon what the reasoning is and where a kid's at from a maturity standpoint and a development standpoint.
Awesome. I mean, one of the things, for me, and this is, in my role with the Ontario Lacrosse Association, is talking a lot about, what you mentioned about, kids that are, I'm not playing box lacrosse anymore because I want to focus on field lacrosse. And, I think, I couldn't agree with that theory more. But on that note, again, we talked about some of the little things like, the north-south dodging and stuff like that. In box lacrosse, it's a lot of east-west. Is that something that's useful in the box game as well?
Here's a prime example, Brucey, and you know better than I, but you look at a guy like Tommy Shriver, and look at the impact that he's had on the box game and in his short box career. And I think you're seeing that trend go that direction. It's obviously with the rule changes and the Olympic game movement and the sixes, there's more blend of lacrosse from both the field and the box than there's ever been, without question. And so I absolutely think that the north-south dodging component, as just an example, or the one hand, cradling as an example, those are going to help the box game as well. You think about the year that we lost in the semifinals to the Colorado Mammoth. Why did we lose? G. Nash had 19 saves in the fourth quarter.
That's where I was going to go, but no, to your point.
You look at Josh Sims, J.J. Albert, Nicky Carlson, Canadian guy. He's more of a north-south guy, right? He was starting at his own end and he's getting up the floor. Those guys really won that game or won that championship for him in 2006. So I think there's more blend of the game than ever, and I think it's only going to continue to go more in that direction.
So on that note, as a national team coach, what areas as Canadians do we need to, focus on, kind of taking that next step? And I'm talking, it could be anything. I mean, obviously you're a very smart guy, and you've got your feet in the ground at the box and the field game. What do you see us as Canadians? What do we need to do to kind of, elevate our game? And that's part of the reason we're doing this playbook, is we want to have this discussion across the country and get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, well, I think it starts in the first thing, and I'd say this just across the board, but from a Canadian standpoint, our first job is we got to get more sticks in hands. I think that's like the biggest thing, and if we don't do that, then, we're missing out, and kids are missing out on the greatest sport on the planet, and it can do so much for a young man or girl. And so I think the first thing is get more sticks in hands, focus on some grassroots programmings, get more involved in schools, and get more exposure to the sport. The second thing from a development standpoint is continue to play box lacrosse, continue to be a part of programs like the Orangeville Northmen, like the Whitby Warriors. You know, look at all the great players that have come through those ranks, you know, over the decades, you know, of lacrosse. You know, best lacrosse players in the world have come through those. And so that's really important. But then can we add now more of an athletic component to the sport of lacrosse? And I think you're seeing the trend with that. You see what Brody Merrill's doing with the Hill Academy and Riley O'Connor. You know, they're really doing an amazing job of preparing kids for the next level. You know, one of the reasons why I love, you know, going to Brody and recruiting Hill kids is you know what you're going to get. You know exactly what you're going to get. They're going to be college ready, and they're going to be mature because, you know, they've been challenged like they're going to be challenged at the next level. You know, and I think, you know, one of the things that separates Canada from anybody else in the world is in the culture in which we coach and the way we interact with our kids, and you know, and you know, how disciplined and how much we challenge our guys. You know, I'll never forget 3 years ago when I came up to Orangeville during to watch the junior A's play, and I was up there early on the kind of the recruiting trail. First went to Dairy Queen and got an Orangeville Blizzard. You know, that was the first thing I did, Brucey. You know, and then next thing I did is I went over to the rink early, and there's Shooter with his Pee-wee team, and he's got one ball on the floor, and they're running transition drills, you know, until they can't run anymore. And that was the environment that I grew up in, and I know that was the environment that you grew up in, and that's fun. You know, that is fun. You know, I think this mentality of you know, where you got to be on the greatest team, you got to have the fancy gear, you got to have the best gloves, you know, the whole mentality of everybody needs to get the trophy and all that stuff. It's you know, that's all window dressing. You know, what really separates the top from everybody else, and this is why you know, the Canadians are at the top of the world, is how much we challenge guys and how tough we are, and how much we hold our kids accountable. And I think if we continue to do that, on top of continuing to play box, on top of introducing the sport to more people, you know, across the country, then we're going to continue to do great things.
Well, I don't know if sum it up any better than that, in my opinion. I mean, you know, it's I could listen to you talk all night, Brownie. It's been a real pleasure, and you know, I don't know, Russ, if you got anything else, but you know.
No, it's good for. I want my parent group out here in Cranbrook to hear that, so then I don't get any hassle when I'm pushing these kids too hard. So no, I appreciate it, Coach. Again, I had heard you speak at the Simon Fraser a few years ago. I kind of shut my coaching clinic down and took them to your and Coach Tierney's session, and I still say it's the best coaching clinic I ran because I didn't have to do any of the speaking for that afternoon, and you guys did. But thank you so much for your wisdom and your time.
Well, what you guys are doing for the sport and for Canada Lacrosse is amazing, and happy to be a part of it, and always here to help in whatever I can do. So best of luck with all this stuff, and great seeing both you guys, and good luck with everything.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
a lot, Brownie, and good luck in the rest of the year.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks a lot.